Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to take complex stuff and, well, help you get it.
Make it make sense.
Exactly. So today we're digging into a different way of thinking about education. It's called the Task Formator framework.
hmm And it's a pretty central piece of something larger called the Taxshila Model of system learnography.
Yeah.
Comes from Shiva Narayan Taxshila Page's work.
Right. So for you, the learner listening in, maybe you want to learn fast, learn deep, but not get totally overwhelmed.
Yeah, avoid the info dump feeling.
That's the plan. We're going to unpack this alternative idea, figure out the core principles, what it's really saying, and maybe, what impact it could have.
Sounds good. We got the source material right here focusing on this concept.
Okay, let's jump in then. So where does this whole idea start? It seems to kick off with a critique of, well, how things are usually done.
It does. A big part of the argument in the text is that traditional schooling, the way most of us experienced it, often leads to students just sort of passively absorbing information, memorizing fast.
Right, like for the test.
Exactly. And the big concern highlighted is that this doesn't really set people up for the complexities and, frankly, the messiness of the real world. It's dynamic out there.
Yeah, the text is pretty direct about that. It uses phrases like rigid structures and talks about creating forced learners or even dependent learners.
Dependent learned.
The idea being you might get really good at following the syllabus, hitting the marks, getting the grades.
Yeah, ticking the boxes.
But when you're faced with a totally new problem or you need to create something from scratch or even just take a calculated risk, maybe you feel a bit lost.
That's the core criticism. The text suggests this traditional system might inadvertently produce more job seekers than job creators.
Ooh, that's a strong claim.
It is. And it suggests this structure can kind of stifle risk-taking, exploration, and, genuine creativity. That natural curiosity gets pushed aside.
Okay, so that sets the stage. Traditional system of potentially limiting. So how does this task formator idea offer something different?
Well, it's presented as a key element within this system learnography. And it's important to understand it's not described as just another teaching tool like a new textbook or app.
Right, not a curriculum update.
No. The text calls it a high-level algorithmic template, which, okay, sounds a bit technical.
Yeah, unpack that a little. Algorithmic template.
Think of it like a fundamental blueprint, almost like software, for how the brain should ideally engage with and structure tasks. It's less about what you learn initially and more about how your brain sets itself up to learn and act.
How it sets itself up.
Okay. And crucially, it's rooted in what they call visuo-spatial learnography. So learning through seeing and understanding spatial relationships. And it operates in what's termed the sixth dimension of learnography.
Whoa, sixth dimension, what's that linked to?
They specifically connect it to mathematics and motor science, so the logic of math and the science of how we move and control our bodies. It's bringing those elements together.
Okay, this is getting interesting. So it's not just about thinking, it's about seeing, spacing, moving. How does it actually format the brain, as they say? That's a really evocative phrase.
It is. The mechanism described involves activating key brain areas,
Yeah.
the visual cortex, obviously, but also spatial reasoning centers and the motor circuits.
The pathways that control movement.
Exactly. But the goal isn't just to light up those areas. It's to use that activation to build what the text calls functional brain page modules.
Functional brain page modules. Okay, what are those, practically speaking?
Think of them less like static files of information stored away and
Yeah.
more like dynamic, interconnected circuits in the brain. They're built to support actual decision-making, learning through doing, and active problem-solving.
Ah, okay. So it's a contrast. It's not just teaching the mind by pouring information in.
Right.
It's about actively formatting the brain to use information effectively, shaping the processing machinery itself.
That's a good way to put it, shaping the machinery. The text emphasizes that this helps learners create mental blueprints of tasks.
Mental blueprints, like visualizing the whole process.
Yeah, kind of like seeing the steps, the structure, how to break down something complex visually in your mind. And it's not passive visualization. It involves motor practice, imagery rehearsal, actually doing the steps, mentally and physically.
So it's very active, very engaged.
Hugely. That active engagement is key to forming a brain page, which they present as a much deeper, more integrated, and usable form of knowledge than just memorizing a fact from a book page.
All right, it sounds like it inherently encourages you to be more self-directed in your learning, too. Your brain is actively constructing things.
Precisely. Less passive reception, more active cognitive construction.
Now, you mentioned mathematics earlier being linked to that sixth dimension. The text seems to give math a really central role here, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just another subject in this model. It's positioned as pretty fundamental to developing this task formator capability.
Why math specifically? What does it do?
Well, the argument is that mathematics, especially when you get into deriving formulas and understanding proofs, develops core skills. Things like pattern recognition, logical sequencing.
Thinking step by step.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also something they call functional abstraction.
Functional abstraction. Okay, what does that mean?
It's like the ability to see the underlying principles or structures in a problem, to grasp the function of something beyond its surface details.
Yeah.
The text argues that learning to, say, derive a formula or really understand how dynamic systems work quite literally formats the brain to handle complexity better.
So learning math trains your brain to see patterns and structures everywhere, not just in math problems.
That's the idea. It helps you see connections, understand systems, and I like this phrase in the text. It helps learners see the world less as a set of instructions to follow and more as a problem-solving playground.
A problem-solving playground. I like that. Okay, so math builds this foundational processing skill. Then, as you learn things, you build these brain pages.
Right. Each sort of page of knowledge, when processed through this task formator approach, becomes a brain page, an active functional circuit.
And then these brain pages combine.
Yes, all these individual brain pages, these functional circuits, they integrate to form what the text calls a brainscape.
Brainscape. Okay, describe that.
It's presented as your unique, personalized internal map. But it's not just a map of knowledge, like facts you know. It includes your understanding, your developed motor skills, even your confidence levels related to those areas. It's a much more holistic picture of competence.
Wow. So it changes how you even think about what learning is.
It really does. The text points out some key shifts. Learning isn't just receiving information. It's about knowledge being actively transferred and integrated as the brain gets formatted. Knowledge isn't just held, it's practiced and crucially applied. And maybe the biggest shift. Success isn't primarily measured by test scores.
What is it measured by then?
Things like innovation, coming up with new solutions, resilience, bouncing back from mistakes, and, significantly, risk-taking, the willingness to try things even when the outcome isn't guaranteed.
Which leads directly to the ultimate goal mentioned in the article, right? Cultivating risk takers.
Exactly, but not reckless risk-takers. It means people who understand problems deeply because they've built these mental blueprints. People who can visualize potential outcomes, who aren't afraid to take initiative.
And who see failure differently.
Yes. See it as data, as a learning opportunity, not just an endpoint. The text suggests this approach aims to develop individuals like entrepreneurs, investors, leaders.
People who have to operate in uncertainty.
Right. People who can think in systems, see the connections that brainscape, view, and act effectively, even when things are complex and unpredictable.
So, wrapping this up a bit, the core idea is shifting from content delivery to brain formatting.
That seems to be the essence. Using this task formator concept, rooted in visuo-spatial processing and math, to build a more capable, adaptable, and action-oriented brain, moving beyond passive knowledge.
And the potential upside, according to the text, is fostering things we often say we want: creativity, real problem solving, leadership.
And that willingness to take calculated risks,
Yep.
yeah, it's presented as a way to unlock a different kind of potential.
Okay, so for you, the learner, listening to this deep dive, what does this make you think? This idea of moving education from focusing on curriculum content to actively, deliberately formatting the brain.
Yeah, it's a pretty fundamental shift in perspective, isn't it?
It really is. Could this kind of approach genuinely reshape how we learn, how we develop skills, and maybe even what we think is possible for ourselves? Definitely food for thought.
Perhaps something to explore further, maybe looking into this Taxshila page work and the idea of brain page schools they mentioned.
Absolutely. Gives you something to mull over.